What is FIGU? What does FIGU mean? What does FIGU represent? Some commenters say FIGU is a religious movement, or some say FIGU is a UFO group, and some say FIGU is a cult. In this video, I would like to tell you what FIGU is and what FIGU is not, based on my own personal experience over the last 34 years. The term FIGU is a German acronym which stands for Freie Interessengemeinschaft Universell. The first word, frei, in German means free in English. The second word is a compound word. These are two words put together to make one word. Interessen, which means interests in English, and Gemeinschaft, which means community in English. So together, Interessengemeinschaft means community of interests in English. And the third word, universell, means universal in English. So, FIGU, Freie Interessengemeinschaft Universell, translates to English as Free Community of Interests Universal. FIGU was originally founded by Billy Meier in 1973 in a small Swiss town called Hinwil. At that time, a loose group of people began to form, and Billy started to hold meetings in his farmhouse in Hinwil and called the group the Free Community of Interests. It wasn't until 1978 that Billy officially registered the group as Free Community of Interests for Fringe and Spiritual Sciences and Ufological Studies. This was a temporary name because there was a lot of UFO buzz and interest in UFOs in the 1970s. In fact, the Swiss newspaper Blick even published articles about Billy. In 2018, the original intended name, Free Community of Interest Universal, was officially registered and has been in use ever since. So, now that we know what the German acronym FIGU means in English, Free Community of Interest Universal, the next question that may arise might be, what does FIGU represent? To answer this question, we have an explanation from the Plejaren Advisory Committee and Billy that was published in the 927th Contact Report, which took place on February 22, 2026. The Plejaren Advisory Committee, or the Committee as it is sometimes called, provides advice to all of the civilizations in their federation, and sometimes, through Billy, to the people of Earth. This committee is comprised of 1.5 million people, people who are far, far more advanced than anyone on Earth, millions of years more advanced. Because of their work and Billy's work, we have an opportunity to receive real advice from a far more advanced civilization, the Plejaren. In Contact 927, the Plejaren Advisory Committee commissioned Billy to write about what FIGU represents in his own words, and I would like to comprehensively review this document with you. What the FIGU represents. A. The FIGU, Free Community of Interests Universal, is an association that values the comprehensive and far-reaching, important learning of personally real and true humanity, as well as the worldwide striving for true peace and non-war and the general peacefulness of all peoples, as well as the protection of all human beings, as well as every creature with a form similar to humans or human-like life forms, in accordance with the entire creational life in general, and thus also generally the life around nature and of the entire fauna and flora. The first paragraph has 3 main points I'd like to cover. Number 1, the FIGU is an association that values the comprehensive and far-reaching, important learning of personally real and true humanity. We're going to learn a little bit more about true humanity a little further down in the document, but you can think about true humanity as personal qualities such as empathy, such as compassion, tolerance, helpfulness, and forgiveness. Another important aspect with the first point is personally real. This means something that you have personally experienced, and in this case, personally experienced true humanity. Personally real is a main point throughout Billy's writings. Something that you experience yourself, not something that we believe or hear or read about on our phones, on social media. It's something that comes from a genuine personal experience. Number 2, as well as the worldwide striving for true peace and non-war and the general peacefulness of all peoples. This is pretty simple. FIGU is interested in worldwide peace, and worldwide peace always begins within ourselves. If we want to have world peace, then it's important that each individual person observes their way of thinking, and through this identifies any aggressiveness or negative thoughts and slowly reduces them until they are completely eliminated. World peace always begins within ourselves. Number 3, as well as the protection of all human beings, as well as of every creature with a form similar to humans or human-like life forms, in accordance with the entire creational life in general, and thus also generally the life around nature and of the entire fauna and flora. This is very straightforward. The protection of all life is an obligation of the FIGU Association. And this is not just about the protection of human life, which we already do a terrible job of on the earth, but this is about the protection of all life, including the entire fauna and flora and all life in the entire universe. So, paragraph A, the first paragraph in what the FIGU represents, establishes the 3 main pillars of FIGU. 1, true humanity. 2, peace. 3, protection of life. These are the 3 most important things that we in FIGU stand for. B, personal humanity. This is the most important section for me personally, because I experience this particular lack of true humanity so often in daily life. Number 1, true humanity corresponds to an ethical mindset based on respect for all life through self-education, and thus clearly depends on a way of thinking in which statements, opinions, speeches, and judgments of every human being can be either right or wrong, and can therefore be talked through in discussion, peacefully and without quarrel or hatred. True humanity corresponds to an ethical mindset based on respect for all life through self-education. In this case, respect for human life means respecting the statements and opinions of others, even if you don't agree with them. This way of thinking, of respecting other people when we don't agree with their speech and opinions, is something that we at FIGU are striving to improve on. Number 2, the religious or secular beliefs of every human being are to be fundamentally respected. They are indisputable and profound and deeply rooted in one's character and personality. Consequently, change can only occur through self-education grounded in unswayable personal thought processes and character development. Here we go. Religious or secular beliefs of every human being are to be fundamentally respected. This is such an important point. Whether you're a Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Buddhist, Hindu, or any other religion in the world, it's important to learn and develop respect for religious or secular beliefs of other people. It doesn't have to be religious. It could be worldly beliefs. This respect that is part of true humanity is something that FIGU members strive to improve on. The second paragraph of B, personal humanity. 1. Actions based on true humanity towards the environment are grounded in balanced, high-principled goals, which are to be expressed towards fellow human beings at all times, on the basis of an honest attitude and sentiment towards fellow human beings. These very profound goals are expressed in the values of dignity and honor towards creation, which, in all its existence, is the universe-wide nature and in no way corresponds to an imaginary God or non-existent gods or other supposedly higher beings. This second point of paragraph B in personal humanity needs a little bit of decoding. Actions based on true humanity towards the environment. This is what we put out. This is how we act. This is how we treat the environment, meaning other humans and all of nature, are grounded in balanced, high-principled goals. So, what are these high-principled goals? Further down it reads, these very profound goals are expressed in the values of dignity and honor towards creation. Let's explore the meaning of dignity. Dignity means universal human worth or value. Dignity is concerned with how people feel, think, and behave in relation to the worth or value of ourselves and to others. To treat somebody with dignity is to treat them as being worth something in a way that's respectful of them and as valued individuals. Maybe I share a quick example. Dignity, because it's not used so much in the English language, dignity, an example of dignity could be when someone's dying, when someone's sort of very close to death, on their deathbed, and you're there with them, and maybe you wipe the drool off their face and straighten their collar, their shirt up, to give them dignity, to provide the dignity as a human being, even in their final moments. This is an example of what dignity might mean. Honor is defined as a quality that combines honesty and respect. So these goals that are dignity and honor are to be expressed towards fellow human beings at all times. The next sentence, and all of these values, which are to be devoted to creation nature, are also considered inclusive for fellow human beings, creatures with similar form to humans, as well as human-like life forms, as well as for the entirety of nature and its fauna and flora, whereby these values are to be conveyed to them in forms, all of which are based on the following values, : the third paragraph of B, personal humanity. True humanity requires an honest mindset towards women, children, and men, regardless of age, faith, skin color, race, profession, civil status under civil law, and the form of society in which one lives. And it absolutely doesn't matter what sexual orientation, nationality, or marital status the person has. So, be honest with everyone. That's what this is essentially saying. 2, every life, that is, every human being, creature with a form similar to humans or human-like life forms, nature, and the entire fauna and flora, and everything else that exists, is to be treated by the true human being as a whole with absolutely positive qualities and abilities. So, every life, humans, fauna, and flora, are to be treated with positive quality and abilities. Number 3, and this should be done regardless of origin or sex, because it should be the foundation for solidarity with one another, which creates trust and security, as well as fundamental mindfulness towards anything and everything. This is a foundational principle, creating a solidarity with one another. When we treat others with reverence, respect, and dignity, this creates similar feelings and understandings in the other person, and begins to build solidarity. It begins to build a connectiveness with the other person or the other people. This is actually contained in a creational law called the law of reciprocity. But I want to stay on the topic here and continue with the fourth paragraph. The fourth paragraph of B, personal humanity. Personal humanity is a positive fundamental attitude that also protects dignity and all life and its high values, just as morality and decency are cultivated in the best possible way in accordance with ethics. There's an excellent article on the value of ethics and morals written by Billy, and it's linked here, and I'll also put it in the description, so if you want to download it, you'll be able to download it for free. Ethics and morals are something that is developed within ourselves. They aren't something that is automatically given. They are developed and expanded by ourselves through our learning during our normal life. Number 2, true humanity in dealing with fellow human beings includes absolute responsibility and a specific application of humanism, as well as brotherly love, empathy, tolerance, helpfulness, forgiveness, compassion, consideration, tolerance. This is also listed twice in the German. I checked it, and tolerance is listed twice in this list, so it must be important. And I'm sure that having tolerance is something that we desperately need here on earth, as well as respect, kindness, openness, commitment, wholeness, and love, but also the recognition and acceptance of one's own shortcomings, as well as the effort to remedy them. They use the word humanism. Humanism is a non-religious, democratic, and ethical life stance that affirms human beings have the right and responsibility to give meaning to their own lives. It's an approach to life based on reason and our common humanity. Number 3, applied kindness is very important, as well as daily compassion, responsibility, courage, valuable action, absolute reliability in words and deeds, but also cultivating mildness and goodwill correctly, putting oneself in the shoes of others and listening to them actively and attentively, empathy, upholding dignity and honor, making the right decisions, approaching conflicts constructively, cultivating commitment, and accepting fallacies and imperfections. So we have here applied kindness, cultivating mildness and goodwill, empathy. These are all aspects of how we treat other people, how we treat strangers, how we treat someone who's upset, how we treat someone who looks different or believes differently than we do. These things, applied kindness, empathy, compassion, are things that FIGU members practice and improve upon. The fifth paragraph of B, personal humanity. Personal true humanity is characterized by a fully conscious, ethical attitude towards oneself and is very important in terms of interpersonal relationships. True humanity is characterized by an ethical attitude towards ourselves. This means how ethical we are within ourselves, with our thinking, with our feeling, with our actions. And this is very important for interpersonal relationships because how we treat ourselves is directly related to how we treat others. Number 2, this includes self-acquired character traits and values that the character controls, such as empathy, respect, helpfulness, and tolerance when dealing with fellow human beings. So, self-acquired character traits such as empathy, respect, helpfulness, and tolerance. That's a third time. So I checked it. In the German, tolerance is listed 3 times in this document. So, that's not an accident. When they write that, that's something that we should pay attention to and and learned that that's probably something we need a lot more of here. So anyway, tolerance was mentioned 3 times in this document. Number 3, the whole is based on taking responsibility and thus goes far beyond simply being nice, thereby creating a bond with fellow human beings. This is truly the value by which a conscious, clear, and honest ethical attitude is created, through which interpersonal relationships can be shaped effectively. So all of this is based on taking responsibility and creating a bond with fellow human beings. This was mentioned before, creating solidarity with others. This is a sort of a common theme in this document. The 6th paragraph of B, personal humanity. This sums it all up. Personal, true humanity towards fellow human beings includes peacefulness, respect, kindness, compassion, and so forth towards fellow human beings. And it is the quality that connects all human beings with one another, completely independent of origin, religion, or culture, etc. True humanity is what FIGU represents and strives for. C, protection of life. The protection of life is an obligation of the FIGU Association and absolutely encompasses the entire creation, which is the noble, immeasurable nature of the 7 universes, their material belts, cosmoses, as well as everything in all the breadth of their existence, and all that exists in the realm of their entire 7-fold existence. So Billy teaches us that there are actually 7 distinct universes, not just the one universe that we know, all of our stars and planets and everything, but there are actually 6 others, and they occupy the same space, the same physical location in the creation, but they're differently dimensioned. So we can't see them or come into contact with them. Of course, there is a dimension gate that the Plejarens can build to travel from their universe to ours, but that's basically what they're talking about here, is the 7 different universes. We live in one of those 7. D, the protection of all lives. The protection of all lives is a completely natural, fundamental right given to absolutely all living beings through creation, that basically every life is to be protected from violence and killing in every way, without degeneration through criminal legislation, wantonness, revenge, retaliation, hatred, strife, etc. So, the protection of life is a fundamental right for all living beings. This is a very broad statement. This includes not only humans, but all living beings, including fauna and flora, and all life in the entire universe. Every life of every genus and species is therefore to be absolutely protected from harm regarding the body, the consciousness, and the subconsciousness, and consequently to be preserved in integrity in every form. Every life is to be protected and absolutely cannot in any way be vulnerable to attack. And therefore, the protection has to be classified for all life forms and to be absolutely guaranteed that all creatures endowed with a physically conscious consciousness and subconsciousness are to be protected, just as all life forms of all genus and species are to be protected with an impulse consciousness, instinct consciousness, sensation consciousness, feeling consciousness, perception consciousness, and also those who are consistently equipped with only a sensory consciousness, and indeed in absolute independence from any viability or any health condition. It's interesting that they enumerated the different types of consciousness for the different types of life forms. And I did do a video on the different types of consciousness forms in nature called Consciousness, What is the Purpose? If you'd like to view that later. E, the protection of life. The protection of life, which is in its entirety specifically intended only towards all human beings, creatures with a form similar to humans, and human-like life forms, is given as a basic right and is based on the fact that they have a physical conscious consciousness and subconsciousness that is capable of evolution, whereby they are able to develop higher in every way and completely consciously in their lifetime, as this is extensively determined and given in a creation natural way. It is also given through the creation nature that all protection of food for the existence of human beings is naturally and constantly present, just as they deliberately develop themselves higher through their self-initiative, self-effort, and use their own thoughts, thereby to become knowing and aware of conscious life, and therefore aware of their conscious evolution. So the protection of life also includes the protection of food for the existence of human beings. Food is connected to life, so the protection of food is a natural extension of protection of life. Through this, the human beings also comprehensively recognize that they are a being endowed with conscious consciousness and subconscious faculties, just as this is also characteristic of all creatures with a form similar to that of humans and human-like life forms, for whom the protection of life currently applies in full as a fundamental right. So, the protection of life applies to all human or human-like life forms in all 7 universes as a fundamental right. F. Protection of life. Protection of life also includes the entire fauna and flora as an absolute fundamental right, which is determined by creational natural law. Therefore, in every case, the right to life is also a fundamental right for fauna and flora, which says that it should be protected in lawfulness and should not be killed, injured, or otherwise impaired in livelihood, damaged, harmed, inhibited in the habitat, or exterminated negligently, wantonly, maliciously, thoughtlessly, out of greed for profit, arrogance, and so forth. So, this section on the protection of life covers all fauna and flora, and that it has a fundamental right to be protected in lawfulness. What does this mean? This means that the fauna and flora should not be killed or injured maliciously, thoughtlessly, out of greed or out of negligence, and things like this. And before someone posts in the comments, "I can't kill any animals or plants, so I can't eat," this is not what this says. Of course you can have a garden or raise animals for food, but degenerative killing or malicious or thoughtless killing is prohibited. Number 2. Thus, the protection of all life also extends to the area of the entire life of nature and its fauna and flora, and just as comprehensively to its entire area of life, and, in fact, according to its laws of wildlife. I thought this was a nice inclusion, the laws of wildlife. In FIGU, we talk about the laws of nature or the laws of creation. For example, the law of causality, or the law of becoming and passing, or the law of appearance, or the law of reciprocity, or the law of life. And we've learned some things about the law of life and the law of protection in this video. So those are just a couple of examples. Number 3, everything is clearly determined according to its use, whereby arbitrary, destructive, and exterminating interventions and machinations belong to the realm of the non-permitted. F. Protection of life, second paragraph. Unfortunately, in many cases, everything in nature was regulated or misregulated by human beings due to their lack of understanding of nature, whereby the fauna and flora were exhausted, and therefore all wildlife was severely impaired or even partially exterminated. I probably don't need to expand on this, Billy mentioned in Contact 880 that about 60,000 genus and species of flora and fauna are exterminated, wiped out every single year. Unfortunately, it must be said that the majority of humanity behaves in ways contrary to nature and life, and overexploits the planet, nature, and its fauna and flora. Billy has been mentioning this over and over again. We hear it all the time. Exploitation of the planet and nature. We have too many people, too little resources, which leads to war and killing and all the things we just talked about. G, the law of protection. The law of protection, which must be explained repeatedly, is the principle for all human beings, creatures with a form similar to humans and human-like life forms of every genus and species, is to be protected under all circumstances and, in fact, without distinction according to value of life, sex, and sexual orientation. And this, as is clearly stated, applies to all human beings, creatures with a form similar to humans, and human-like life forms, regardless of whether they are healthy, wounded, sick, civilians, criminals, or other persons. So, this is saying all human beings are to be protected. All. Specific existing laws of creation nature guarantee the safety and basic protection of life for human beings, creatures with a form similar to humans, and human-like life forms, as well as the planet as a whole, the all-encompassing nature and its fauna and flora. So, all of nature, all fauna and flora, and the planet are to be protected. This protection applies not only to life, but also to the personal freedom of the human being, creatures with a form similar to humans and human-like life forms, as well as to children, adolescents, and women and men, as well as to every human being in general, nature, and overall to the fauna and flora. So, the freedom of humans, the freedom of fauna, the freedom of flora are to be protected. The law of protection, second paragraph. The protection also applies to human beings vis-a-vis groups of a vulnerable kind, such as criminals, felons, religions, sects, organizations, and also other vulnerable phenomena, respectively vulnerable and fragile, as well as sensitive and physical, psychological, religious, or social impairments, and so forth. So the law of protection also applies to criminals. It applies to sick or dying people. All of these types of people also the law of protection applies to. So, to summarize, FIGU stands for True Humanity, Peace, and Protection of Life. These are the three most important things that we, as FIGU members, stand for. It's important to note that when we talk about striving for true humanity or striving for world peace, it's not the FIGU Association that does the striving. It's the individual members who do the striving. It's the individual members' personal efforts that strive to learn, strive to understand, and strive to grow based on individual efforts and capabilities. FIGU is about thinking for yourself, not believing. FIGU is about observing life as it is really and using our thinking, rationality, and discernment in everyday life. FIGU is about each individual person observing their thinking, observing their feelings and emotions, and observing their speech and actions in order to learn and adjust their thinking and behavior. FIGU is about humanism, empathy, tolerance, helpfulness, forgiveness, compassion, consideration, respect, kindness, and brotherly love. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you for being here. I hope you learned something. And to close out this video, I wanted to leave you with a quote from Billy.